So my guest today is Kutlwano Masote, a cellist, composer, and seasoned broadcaster whose life has been shaped by a deep immersion in classical and choral music. That's the formal part. Welcome.
Thank you, Koja, and thanks for having me.
It feels like you were destined to do what you're doing. I think we'll get into the nitty-gritties of that in terms of, being a musician, being a cellist, working in classical music. Was there anything else when you were a teenager that, you were doing? I guess to a certain extent, you're doing the music because your family. That's what you were raised in. But what was there as like a 12, 13, 14-year-old where you're like, actually, that's what I want to do with my life?
There wasn't anything else. I think as children, I wanted to be a traffic cop, as we called it, because they rode around on those scooters and all the TV series around those crime busters. But I think I knew as soon as I had kind of an understanding of the world, even though it was a child's understanding of the world, that I knew that I wanted to become a music person. And that's got largely to do with the family, as you say, that I come from, my father in particular. But music, once the bug had bitten me as a child, probably as I was approaching my teens, I knew this is what I wanted to do.
So I'm fascinated by, I have read your book, Imperfect Harmony. We, particularly as Africans, so the era and the generation that we grew up in, a lot of times our parents had clear ideas of what they wanted us to do with our lives, starting off being kind of rooted in education. So, as Africans, we're always going and gathering degrees. But then also for so many of our parents, there were only certain jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated in reading your story and kind of learning more about that journey and your family. I'm fascinated how it felt like you lived in this kind of musical oasis.
Yes.
In the middle of Soweto. And I've talked to different people from different backgrounds where, there's the teacher, there's I want you to do something where you can make a decent living or you can take the family out of a situation. And you're in the heart of this amazing musical oasis. At what point do you realize the significance of that, the significance of the house you grew up in, the family you had around you?
Yeah. So music in my family, on both sides, my mother's and my father's side, was a very actively practiced, expression. On the one hand, my mother's family is known, of course, for the political activism, but they were amateur musicians. My grandfather, Zef Mutuping, who, as I always say, was probably the fiercest opponent of the apartheid regime, was also a choir master when he was a teacher at Orlando High. On my father's side, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, Mrs. Mutuping, was a nurse and an educator herself as well. She had multiple professions, but also she ran a children's choir. So that was on my mother's side. On my father's side, they were church people, and all of my aunts and uncles sang in church choirs and community choirs. And in fact, it is on that side that the original members of the Soweto String Quartet that recorded those albums in the 90s and the 2000s, the three Kemise brothers are actual cousins of mine, taught also by my father. So we were a happy musical family. So it was not unusual for someone like myself to have emerged as a musician, and not everyone did, of course, but it was not unexpected. So I think because I excelled at such a young age, and really the bug bit me quite hard, and I continue to be an expression of that. But it was the easiest thing, and I didn't see it as a duty that needed to be fulfilled, but rather as a privilege that I got such a beautiful head start and could have something to spring off.
And classical music in particular, like I guess what was it like in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Like classical music is considered the least likely, and
Sure.
like you're saying, your grandfather was an activist, and at the same time, classical music is probably associated. It's most associated with Europeans,
Oh
colonization,
yeah.
etc.
Yeah, but most importantly, also Christianity. And as you
Mm,
know, even with colonialism and even apartheid later on, it's very difficult for us as we try and oppose these systems to extricate the religion out of
mm,
it, the Christianity out of it. So it's very much woven into the fabric of who we are as Black South Africans, and therefore everything that accompanies it, literally and metaphorically, becomes part of us. So choral singing, hence this tradition of choral singing, it comes from our church background. But the whole idea also of that aspiration, it is funny. We kind of admire our tormentors in a way,
mm,
and I think that's also our love affair with this elitist classical music, which it isn't really or need not really be all the time. It is beautiful in and of itself. It's just that its practitioners, its funders, tend to be those. It comes from nobility.
mm. But also, I mean, like you're saying, it doesn't need to be put on such a high pedestal. And I find, I mean, I'm not extremely knowledgeable about it, but I'll have my moments where I'm like, I feel like listening to classical music.
Yeah.
And because I listen to kind of a wide range of music, so because I didn't come to it within that framework,
Sure.
I can appreciate when I hear something
Sure.
for its sake as opposed to within a particular context.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I think the soundtrack's been there in all our upbringing, Black, white, South Africans, because you go to school, for example, whether it's a church school or a secular school, there is a level of a choir or sort of cultural programs that kind of borrow from this. I know schools are different now, where children are just encouraged to do whatever it is that pleases their hearts around creativity. But if you are the age that we are, you would have grown up in a very much four-part harmony, sort of classic Western harmony environment. So it is. I think it is familiar to a lot of us that are the age that we are. Yeah.
I think also if you step away from how you're told it's supposed to be appreciated. I mean, so I remember being 18 years old and going to a ballet in Hamburg and sitting through the whole ballet. And at the end of it, I said, okay, so it was great. I loved it. And, and it was orchestra, the orchestra is down in the pit.
Yeah.
So I was like, I loved it. But so there were a whole bunch of dancers in the same color, same color garments, holding sheets.
Yeah.
And they were like, that was the sea. The whole thing was set in a ship on the ocean.
Yeah.
And I'd missed the whole story, right? But without the story, I still really enjoyed the experience. I found a beauty and I found a resonance.
Yeah.
And I found over the years, I mean, I remember studying Shakespeare or studying poetry in high school. And I went to a British school in Lesotho. And I only came to love poetry after I left school, when I started writing. Because at school, they tell you what this person is saying.
Yeah.
And I found, like, with things like classical music, you're told what you're supposed to appreciate. And when you're told that, it becomes very difficult to find space for yourself within it.
Yeah, I think the art has to speak to you. I think part of the value of education is that it arms you perhaps with a vocabulary, and you start to understand form. You start to understand how these, whether it's Shakespeare and Byron, and how they would influence later writers and influence authors like you and I, because we are authors, and we found our voice very separately from iambic pentameter. But it was good to study it because it gave you it armed you with a knowledge of, or at least a system of writing and the tools of storytelling. If you did drama, more specifically for myself, playing all these operas and ballets that are kind of, oh, okay, that's what they're trying to do. So you develop this palette and an appreciation, and you develop good taste, most of all. I always say this I have a son who's a violinist, and I always say to him, and he doesn't resist, and I say to him, it's important to play your Bach and your Vivaldi and your Corellis, especially even the very peripheral composers, because although you'll end up doing what you end up doing with your music, it cultivates good taste. And I think for me, that's the point. Yeah.
I mean, good taste and as well as kind of a grounding. It's like that saying, you have to kind of understand the rules first before you can break them.
Start playing with them. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, your son is now the next generation. And I saw you talked about kind of homeschooling him. And I do often jump around a bit in terms of just thinking, what was that process of homeschooling like?
So we homeschooled
because you actually did a lot of part of the teaching.
Yeah. I was the headmaster, I called it. So homeschooling for us was in a time before the pandemic lockdown years, where people did remote learning, because homeschooling and what most people did are not the same thing. Because there was a whole system of accountability with the teacher and the school, and eventually the children went back to class learning. But we decided to homeschool our 12-year-old Pendo, because he was showing promise on the violin. He was with a violin teacher here in Johannesburg called Irene Tsonef. And Irene is a taskmaster, Russian school of violin playing. And she said, your child is really promising. And with my gifted children, my, kind of top of the class children, I often ask their parents to consider homeschooling so that I can work with them and free the child up from all of these extramural activities. Schools are fantastic. Functioning schools in South Africa are fantastic. If you think of, especially, he was at a private school, a boys' school, the organized sports, the culture, choir, the drama, the chess, the this. Children get exposed to a lot of stuff, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
And somewhere in there, you find something that speaks to you, hopefully, or you, in any case, have an appreciation of the full kind of offering that these schools try and do. And it's great. I really subscribe to it, even at a price tag. However, my child spent 2-3 afternoons a week on the cricket field, hoping the ball doesn't come to him. And it rarely follows you, as you know, if that's how you feel about it. But we wanted to free those hours that he was not going to be the next John T. Rhodes. We wanted to free up those hours. He wanted to play his violin and music in general. So we had the conversation, as prompted by Irene Tsonef, the violin teacher. And when he was 13, 12, grade 6 level, we started, my wife and I had a regiment at home of, 5 o'clock in the morning, and 2 mornings a week he spent in violin class with Irene, really being drilled. So that was really good. And we thought we'd do it for 3 years or so. And, the plan that we had with Irene is then that would put him at a level where we can start to audition for specialist music schools for his high school years, whether in North America or in the UK. And within a year and 3 months, the opportunity came for him to audition for a school called the Yehudi Menuhin School in England, which is a school for gifted children founded by Lord Yehudi Menuhin in the 1960s. And we sent a tape as it were, a video. And they invited us to say they want to have a closer look, kind of an in-person, and the rest is history. So it paid off. We only had to do it for a year and a half. And it was the most enlightening process, even for Maslugelo, my wife, and I, to just get to know our child differently, and to also have an appreciation for what educating is. And just as I wind off here, so Pendo then goes, our son then goes off to the Many in school for 5 years, and now coming up to the end of his 4th year at the Royal College. He'll graduate in July. And it's been 9 years. He's 22. So we haven't lived with our child. I mean, they were sent home in the pandemic, as you know, but we haven't lived with our child for 9 years. And he's now 22. But I cherish those 2 or 1.5 years, those months where we're together. And, if I had a gig in Polokwane, I'd say, get in the car, you coming with me, we'll do that project as we drive. So I got to know my child, and I don't feel that I've missed out on anything because we're very close, and so I really am grateful for that.
And then navigating the two different personalities that you have with children. I mean, you have 2 kids, I have 2 kids, and one of the things my daughter taught us, she was born, there's 4 years between them.
Yeah.
My daughter taught us that from very early. She came in and was just like, okay, I'm in charge of stuff here. But the thing that she taught us, and the thing that I've taken away and I'm still navigating, is the difference in personalities. Yeah. And the fact that, sometimes decisions you're making for one child, you cannot make the exact same decision for the second child.
Yeah, so that's been very interesting. Of course, music is a time-intensive and an expensive venture. I sat in on all of those lessons on a Tuesday and a Friday morning at Irene's teaching studio. But similarly with our youngest, Kaho, so my children are much closer. They're 2 years apart, and they're both boys. So it's, in a sense, the same parenting philosophy. But they couldn't be more different, as human beings. Kaho loves that the cricket ball comes to him and he'll catch it, and actually that's what he's doing with his life. He's having a go at a career at cricket. Brilliant clarinetist, by the way. I always say he got all the music genes in the family, which is saying a lot, but he's not a musician. He's not, inside he's not a musician. Shame, my poor boy, we tried, and he stopped music halfway through high school, which was a challenging decision because that meant giving up a music scholarship at St. John's. But we wanted a happy child, so it was a very short discussion. We're like, if that's what you want, that's what you have. And again, cricket, time intensive, very expensive. So we were prepared in that sense for the commitment of sitting on the side of a cricket field on a Saturday all day, because that's how long a 50-over game lasts. And then on Sunday, it's club cricket. So it's a cricket club throughout high school. So, with club cricket, they play pretty much throughout the year. School is seasonal, obviously summer. Since he's been at university now, the second year, I think I've only gone to watch him 3 times because I have paid my dues. Although we did go to Stellenbosch to watch an inter-university tournament for a week because, again, cricket is one of those things, that we've always enjoyed. But yeah, just understanding what your children's needs are. It's not a one size fits all. It is both my passions, sport and music, that I kind of get to live vicariously. I was never that good at sport myself. But just to learn about, okay, is that why that happens? Okay, so why aren't you going on? It stopped raining, because, okay. So it's been a learning for us as well. But I think both boys, and I say it in the book, my children will never utter the words, we wish we'd spend more time with our father, because both Maslugelo and I really put in the hours. We didn't question when someone said, I need a new bat. I dropped my violin and the bridge broke. We just said, we'll fix it. Please be more careful next time. And we supported in the ways that we were able to.
Were you able to, when Pendo was doing his music lessons, um, did you have that level of trust in teacher to stay out of it?
Yeah, it's actually, I think that's an excellent question because I learned that from my father. My father, being the violin mentor that he is, the violin teacher that he was, decided at some point that my sister Neo should go and have lessons with his former mentor, Alan Solomon, because he also understood that it's better to, or it's wise to have other points of view, and Alan could fine tune on the more technical things because he was a university professor of violin, etc. So my father had the humility and the wisdom to say someone else can take it from here. So when it came, Irene Sonev, my son's teacher, we played in a string quartet together. We were colleagues together in the National Symphony Orchestra in the late '90s. So she's an old friend, and I trusted her methodology. And you know what? I learned a lot sitting in there because she was such a seasoned teacher. Teaching is not something that I took to. I taught, I helped my parents out at their project in the late '90s, early 2000s. But I'm not a teacher. Irene actually retired from the orchestra and decided to focus on teaching. And she has incredible knowledge. And a lot of the colleagues that I play with now are her pupils because she's now nearly 70, I think. So she's been teaching for all these years. And so I was very happy to sit in and to also learn, also understand things. I'm a cellist, not a violinist, so also to understand things more violinistically, if I can put it that way. So no, those that came before me had shown the way to say, you might be called maestro, but you don't know it all.
Yeah. Your father was, I mean, both your parents, it feels like, but especially your father had you grew up, I wouldn't call it shadow because shadow gives, sometimes it feels negative and doesn't feel negative in terms of that relationship. But did you ever feel did you ever feel you're struggling to measure up?
No, but that shadow is still with me, and my father's been gone 9 years now. People still say, "Oh, you're Michael's son," Mike's boy. When they say, "Oh, it's Mike's boy," then I know, oh gosh, I have to earn my respect now. But no, because he was. If you had met him, you would know what a humble human being he was, almost self-effacing. But he also, like, as demonstrated with my sister, giving her over to the next mentor. He knew he had kind of built up this reputation as a music educator, as a conductor, and he wanted that to be my launching pad. So he'd introduce me to people. He'd take me. When I was a teenager, I remember, and I'm not really so much a choral person. Of course, I love choral music. Nor was he a choral person himself, but he worked a lot with choirs, certainly a lot more than I have been able to. And he'd say, "Come to this rehearsal, you learn something." And so I went along, and just also learned that sense of community, dealing with people who don't necessarily read the crotchets and quavers, and just having the patience to work through a score with them at their tempo. So I also learned those skills from him. Fast forward, of course, 30 years later, I'm now not just Mike's son, I'm Pendo's father. So that's another way of dealing with it, because then your child moves in spaces that you don't. He's had the privilege of going to the Manion school, and he's this young. I mean, as we speak now, he's playing at Starlight Classics in Cape Town. They're playing this week, and so I've been getting lots of. They started rehearsals 2 days ago. Lots of messages from colleagues I haven't seen that are in the orchestra in Cape Town that I haven't seen for 10, 15 years. They say, "Oh, it's so nice to see your son. Gosh, he's grown. Oh, he's really good." And so it's my turn now to just hand that, to say, look, here's the platform that you can spring off, that I've also taken forward from not only your grandfather but also your great grandfather, because my grandparents, as I say, were also musical.
I asked that because it feels like there's a parallel, because I was also raised. I mean, I was just raised by my father
Yeah,
from the age of 1. That
yeah,
was my only parent. And for years, I was Frank's son
yeah,
in Lesotho, and even coming to Joburg,
yeah,
where I remember after I got married and my wife was working for one of the business schools, and she would go to places, she would go to meetings, and somebody would go, "Where did you get that surname?"
yeah.
Because my father was a lecturer in Lesotho before he went into business.
Right.
So in the 70s, a lot of the people that, went into exile and came through Lesotho
Yeah,
and ended up in university were taught by him, at some stage.
right.
So yeah, growing up, I asked that because I know, and I worked for my father from 12.
Sure.
And then through high school, after university, I worked full time in the family businesses. And then when you talk about your son now, like I have become my son's, I mean, his nickname is Tego. So somebody will go, "Oh, you're Tego's dad."
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just like, okay, well, I guess my existence has been transferred like
Yeah.
from the father to the son.
So I mean, it's an interesting one because I always say we are here really from if we subscribe to Darwin's evolution theory, we are really here to sustain life. It's a window of 40 years, and we've managed to extend it to even 100 years now. But generally, life, and we spoke about it a bit of when you reach a certain age, things start shutting down, things start being less effective because you've served. You've had your offspring, and it's time for you to move on. And that's a role. I mean, from that, if you think of it from that point of view only, you realize that it makes sense. That's what we're here for. We're here to just transition these people, birth them, and then leave them somewhere, and then they must run with a baton further. And there's nothing, it if you fight it will humble you because it will win. That's just how it is. And especially if you're in the same craft as we are, my grandparents, my parents, myself, and my children. So if people say, "Oh, but your child's better than you," yes, it's called progress. It's
So
called progress.
I believe so we're all links in a chain from our people from time immemorial. Each one of us is a link, but also the responsibility of each generation is to raise up a step.
Absolutely.
So I know that because of the life my father lived and the things that he did and the sacrifices he made, I started from a step higher than he started from. And my job is for my children to start from a step higher.
Absolutely. And it need not be financial, nor even what we're talking about the place then that you occupy in this hierarchy of music. I can tell you that Pendo is going to take his music to a different place than what my father Michael and I did. And I guess in a way I was a precursor because I started dabbling in different cross-cultural, cross-genre things. But it's not because I wanted to be different. It was just I was listening to the music around me to say, this is where the world is going. And now these youngsters have AI tools. The violin. More people are experiencing the violin than people my age. And you kind of touched on it in an earlier question about being in a township and classical music, a violin. It wasn't so far removed. Yes, it was odd, or it was unusual, but people got it. There was symphonic music on a radio, and radio waves were not segmented to say that signal won't arrive in Orlando West. You just get it, and if you stumble upon it and you say, "Oh," or you hear a grandfather playing it all the time, people. I mean, it's you go to the Linda Auditorium to a symphony concert, you will see people who tell you, black people who say, "No, I never had the chance, unfortunately, but I've always loved the music." My father used to play these LPs, or I used to listen to the radio, etc. So the whole thing around it's the music of these people. Yes, broadly speaking, but I think we've all appreciated it through our education, through our church experiences or whatever. But coming back to this whole progression of us and as being linking generations, I think once you step back and you realize this as you get older, that it is that a link in a chain, and what your role is, and once you are enlightened and awake to it, I think you can play your role even more effectively.
What was your favorite music growing up as a teenager?
Classical music, and I really mean it, because my dad, I mean, our home, when people say, "Oh, this reminds me of Sunday morning," there'd be jazz LPs playing. We had choral music blaring. My dad was an early riser, so it would wake you up, and it's in my ear. Now you'd be listening, you hear something, you go, I know that piece, but I don't know what it's called. And then you Shazam it or you look it up, you go, oh, okay, that's yeah, no, he loved the oratorios of Mendelssohn or whatever. It's just in your ear even when you don't know what it is. And I know a lot of music. I mean, I've been broadcasting for the best part of 30 years, so I've made it my business to know a lot of classical music. But my dad was a library. So I listened a lot to, I was fascinated with Yo-Yo Ma. I speak about this a lot, the cellist, and I had the privilege to hear him play in Cape Town a few years ago. I listen still today. I listen to a lot of music from, let's call it the 1650s, not the 1950s.
You're taking nostalgia, listening to a whole different level.
Absolutely. So when I say this is old school, I mean it.
Yeah.
Music from 1650 to 1750. Broadly speaking, Baroque music, music of Bach, Vivaldi, Handel, a little bit of Haydn maybe. He was a little bit later, but that's my favorite music. This old, seemingly simple music. You could even say it's written to a formula. It's not quite, but and it doesn't have trombones. It doesn't have snare drums. It's just strings and a little bit of woodwind, maybe some brass. Simple, transparent. I love it.
Yeah, I'm sitting and I'm going. I got I hear what you're saying, and the names sound familiar.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Bach, Mozart, etc. I mean, Mendelssohn. Those are kind of names you've heard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm thinking about the difference. Like immediately, I'm like Marvin Gaye, OJ's.
So
old school. I mean, my father's an old school jazz person. So Duke Ellington, Count Basie. That's the stuff that I was hearing as a child.
Sure. And I was not mute or deaf to it growing up because it was around. I mean, maybe not so much in my father's repertory, but everyone else played it. I mean, I speak in Imperfect Harmony about my uncles who were part of that famous band called Batsumi, which our mutual friend, as I've just discovered, Kenny, DJ Kenzero, sampled in one of his albums. I was like, hey man, those were my uncles. Two of them were my uncles, and they used to rehearse in my grandmother's house. And I remember just sitting there quietly watching these guys play. So jazz is also in my ear. Of course, I mean, Motown when I was a teenager, Diana Ross, Michael Jackson, these were the big artists. And I was still a young person in the 1980s, and I consumed what everyone, I remember Whitney Houston bursting onto the scene. Oh my gosh, what a superstar. So yeah, I do love a lot of music, but the question was very specific about what was my music that I loved, enjoyed most. Yeah.
I was fascinated to discover that you've really worked. I mean, you've worked kind of across the board in terms of with music. I mean, from hip hop to. I mean, I loved the stuff that you did as Zwei.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that you're actually involved.
Yeah.
Because which song was it again?
It was Papa Don't Preach.
Yes.
It was based on that.
The Madonna sample.
Yes, yeah.
Because I was always fascinated by, and I've phoned Zwei once or twice going, dude, did you sample this song?
Yeah.
Because I was fascinated by his kind of musical ear, and TKZ were like they, sampled Europe, the Final Countdown.
Yes, yes.
Where if you grew up in the spaces you grew up in, so I grew up in Lesotho, so we were a lot more exposed to that music,
Sure.
even though we're totally surrounded.
Yeah.
But most people around me when I came here didn't recognize that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I was fascinated that he had that ear.
Yeah, so I mean, Zwei, I guess a little bit like me, is full of these surprises, right? He listens and always has done, listened broadly, and he's managed to weave some of these great classics into specifically TKZ. You know, Final Countdown became a World Cup song. You know, when we qualified for that World Cup, and they even included Benny McCarthy in Shibobo. And various others, you know, also sampling from folklore. Some of their songs are just old songs that some of them choral songs that he was able to bring in because he listens broadly. By the way, I call him the Quincy Jones of South Africa. Zwei is, if someone deserves the title maestro in South Africa, it's Zwei Bala, uncontested in my book. Really gifted human being, not just musically, in other respects as well. And whenever he's wanted to go on a play date, I've never said no, because I really admire his musicianship.
So what's your approach when going from like Questa to Zwei to the other musicians that you've worked with? What's your approach? Because you're bringing something you're bringing something unique and specific to you. But how do you tackle it?
So I think what I've always, whenever a project like this, to say, man, we need to perform with an orchestra. I always see this as a challenge I never have the time. Okay, when is it? I mean, this Thursday kind of thing. So, no, to be fair, it's never that short notice, but one never has the kind of time that it requires to do something special. And perhaps that's why it's always, creatives need a deadline. If I tell you, can you do this for me in 3 months, you're not going to look at it until the week before, right?
I'll do it 2 months and 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's what creativity needs. But my approach has always been, I've never had the latitude to change the song itself, and I think that's a good thing. So you get a song, maybe just trying to think of a song, and I'm thinking of Questa, but I can't even say the titles on here because, as I say in the book, I was like, what are these guys saying? But you take that song, and then what I wanted to do was to put in strings, as was the brief in this, and make the strings just color the song in a different way, kind of also as a counterpoint. That yes, it's accompanied. It's like, but hey, what is it doing? So that when Questa hears it for the first time, goes, what the, or whoever the person is that I'm arranging for. I mean, in the earlier days, I did stuff also with for, and I was telling a colleague the other day, and they couldn't believe it because they loved that particular song or one of these particular songs so much. And they're like, oh, you did the strings for Miela Africa of Vusma Hlasela. In 1999, I put strings in 4 of those songs. So that was more accompaniment, and so when there was a bridge and he said, I'll leave this open, I said, okay, then I'll put the strings in here. But more recently what I do is it's more of it's almost dancing with a song itself, which I enjoy, because when the artist hears their music, my wife and I always say, did you see the look on his face when you heard the orchestra and his song? More recently we did stuff with Tebe, and we've got plans to do a full thing with Tebe because he's also celebrating 30 years.
30 years, yeah.
And by the way, I've known Tebe. We started 7 together in Mafike. Tebe was the quietest boy, and so when he broke out as a mainstream artist in the mid 1990s, I was like, wow. this guy was such a sweet boy. I mean, he loved his music, now Papa, but he was also very sweet. You needed to know him before he opened up to you. So it was fascinating.
It feels. I mean, it feels like he's still. It's still the same. Like when you describe him like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't known him as long, and
Yeah.
we're not very close, but we know each other.
Yeah.
But that comes through when you interact with him.
Yeah, and I guess we all have those two personalities. You have when you hear the song on radio, you obviously already imagine that this guy is the life of a party. Well, maybe the guy, as soon as he gets off stage, he does what I do these days. You say hello, you have one drink, and you say, I'm just going to the bathroom. And then the next day you say, guys, the phone rang. I'm sorry. I had to go. I had an emergency at home. Maybe he's one of those as well,
I mean, when you talk about the impact of, for example, strings, I'm an old school hip hop fan. But I remember Wu-Tang Clan with their second album, Triumph. And there's a song, and I think it's the first song on the first disc. And it starts with, and it has these strings throughout. And I don't know if it was sampled or if it was played live. But it's like a tan, 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 tan. And I remember that it felt like the first time a hip hop producer had gone that route.
Yeah.
As opposed to, sampling all the other instruments. And it gave it something different.
Yeah, it's those staccato things, and they're very much in hip hop because hip hop is quite staccato, right? It's kind of, you spring off the syncopes. Not everything's on the beats, on the half beat. It's like, hey, that's nice. And the strings can do that because of the attack or when you play it, but they're also very, as a string section is amazing. It could be the simplest hymn-like 4-part harmony, but it's a wash. It's like, and it can crescendo and come back. If you think of those old Nat King Cole recordings, for example, and this is 1950s. Miriam Makeba did stuff, by the way, in the 60s with orchestras in America. And when you hear those, and she does even songs in Yiddish, but it's with a full orchestra, the flute solos, there's chorangle, instruments that we don't encounter every day. And they just add something. It's just another layer. And I think it is very much something, and that's what I enjoy about it when I bring it, whether it's for Kabomo or it's for Lira, and you bring some orchestrations, it just adds another layer. You can take it out, it's still, the song, Pagati or whatever the Pagade or whatever the song is. When you put it in, it's like, and some of them take a while to warm up to it, and then they love it, And so I'm encouraging everyone now that actually, even when we perform, let's record it first. Let's play along with it as a sampler in the performance, so that when you have another gig, you don't need to, maybe it's in a club, but sometimes you see these people perform and the backing vocals are there because it's in the sequence, as they call it, and you can add, you have them, just mix them in lightly, and your song sounds different.
How do you decide on what to work on?
You mean in terms of project?
Yeah.
I take everything. Only now, and I'm the age that I am, I'm in my 50s, only now am I starting to say no, and it's a no because I'm overwhelmed maybe. Up until now, man, you're just building a name, right? And you are paying school fees and you're feeding mouths. I've never said no to work until recently. And it's always, can we look at it for 3 months down the line because I'm overwhelmed. So I want to learn. I want to work. I want to, it's all of those things. So that must tell you that also I don't get a lot of those calls because, there are other writers, admittedly. And I've been very specific about the things, the writing's just been part of what I do, about perhaps getting more conducting work and establishing myself as an orchestral conductor. The writing is the writing, it's like writing Imperfect Harmony. I never thought I would pen something. And I don't see myself as a composer. And as you know, at the end of the book,
I was going to ask you whether we've got there yet.
So maybe we will address it in depth.
I was going to say in terms of being able to call yourself a
Yeah.
composer.
So I mean, and I have an analogy for that. That a journalist, could they write a novel? Yes, they deal with texts. They deal with words and how words could be put together in sequence all day, right? Because they're telling stories, maybe reflecting and reporting on stories. Could they write something original, to use a school term, creative writing? Probably, but it's not what they do. And that's how I see myself. I'm not a composer. It is something that I might be able to focus on a little bit later on. But for now, I see myself as a performer, and I've tried to shake off the tag composer. But there you have it. I've written a docu-series, and I've written jingles, that kind of thing. But I'm still not calling myself a composer.
It's one of those where the rest of us will just decide what we're going to call you.
I think for a long time I was just a musician, and people were saying, "No, you're not a conductor," because I was conducting maybe 7 gigs a year. Now I've stopped playing and that's why I stopped playing the cello for a living, because I realized that if I want to be taken seriously as a conductor, it might mean that I'm going to twiddle my thumbs quite a lot while I wait for the next engagement. But I had to make the decision, and I had to be unavailable to gigs that needed me to come and play as part of the cello section, unless there were maybe something quite, I thought, oh well, can you come with the Johannesburg Philharmonic Orchestra on a tour of Azerbaijan? I was like, yes, I'll pull out the cello. When else am I gonna go to Azerbaijan? But otherwise, yeah, I made that decision, and I think with composing, I will get there. I suspect I will, because composing also means that you can do it at home. You don't have to be on a program. And there'll come a time, maybe in 10 or 15 years time, also where I get tired of go to a rehearsal, and I'll say, guys, I'll send it to you when it's done, kind of thing.
You still practice?
No, honestly, no, I don't. I promise myself at the beginning of every year that this year I'm doing a recital. I'm practicing all my Bach suites. We'll do a Beethoven program. And I kind of get started and it falls off.
What does that feel like because it's something that was consistently a part of your life for a very long period. What does it feel like to kind of go, actually, do you know what? I'm taking a break from that. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm taking a break from that.
You're not the same person you were last year. You're not the same person you were last week. And I think it was a deliberate trajectory that I followed. I wanted to be a maestro, and I talk about why in the book Imperfect Harmony, and we'll get to it. But do I miss it? Yes. Do I miss some of the things? This past weekend we were at Midma Dam, where the KZN Philharmonic. I was there only because the station where I broadcast was there. So we were there on an OB. I watched how these poor musicians had to play on a leaky stage because it started raining and water was dripping through. I don't miss those things, because if I was conducting, I would have said, we stop now and that's it, because you can as a conductor. So I don't miss the thankless role, if I can call it that. Although it's beautiful, I mean, it's great. But now I've tasted the other side, so I'm happy with where I am. I also think that I can still play the cello, and I've been known to, if someone says, will you walk me down the aisle because I say, yeah, sure, I'll play for you, because it's a special occasion like that. I must tell you, 2 years ago, I was invited to come and play at a wedding in Zanzibar, but to play the cello. I went. I practiced with a singer and we went to play. So on a beach wedding in Zanzibar. So for those occasions, yeah, I mean, I can still do it. And yeah, sure, when I get to my sort of retirement years, I think I'll play for myself. There's a wonderful precedent, if you like, of a guy called Pablo Casals, great cellist. a Spanish guy, 1896 to 1876 to 1973. So he lived just short of 100, and the year he died is the year
You
I
were
was
born.
born. So I always felt like, spirit of Pablo lives through me. And Pablo practiced every day until he died. And someone asked him, and he took the level up of string play. Maestro, why do you still practice 3 hours every day in your 90s? I've been playing the cello for 90 years or however long. And I think now I can start to sense some progress in my playing. And I think it's a philosophical thing,
Yeah, absolutely.
And sure, I'm sure he found things in the same pieces like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. Oh, let me try that again. So I look forward to the days when I don't have to see music as something that pays my way in life, where I can just do it for myself. Because I think that is when people say, I wish I could play professionally, I still play at home for myself. I always say to them, you are the best and most privileged musician, because it's not something that you do in order to eat. When people say to me, you must love being a musician, it's such a privilege to be able to play music. I always say, yes, but I have to do it with other humans. And it's the humans that take the joy out of it. Of course, they enhance it because you can only do it with humans, but it's still like doing anything. It's still like working at a corporation. You have to work with other people.
I've had this conversation with quite a few people, kind of across the different, let's say, creative spectrum. And Kitty Petler is the one person who I talk to where her and I have similar views.
Yeah.
Because my line has always been passion is overrated. And because people go, oh, the fact that you write for a living, like when I was in a magazine, they say, it must be great to do your passion. And I'm like, I'm passionate about the lifestyle that my children live.
Yeah.
I'm a working writer. If I don't write words, my children don't eat.
Yeah.
So when I was writing poetry for myself and I was sending it to girlfriends and that sort of stuff, it was fun.
Yeah. Yes.
But the minute I remember I started performing, and then I discovered open mic nights, late 90s, Joburg. I used to run poetry shows at 206 in Orange Grove.
Yeah.
And, the country was changing. And for 2 years, I really made a fist of it. Like, I was like, I'm going to try and build my life and a career around this poetry thing. And I was trying to get bookings, and because I'd been in business, so I understood the corporate world to a certain extent.
Sure.
And then eventually I was like, I'm retired. I'm retired from poetry. People say, you can't retire. And I'm like, listen, I have a wife. I want to start a family. I like nice things, but my wife wants, there's certain things that we require as a family. And poetry is not going to give that to me. And I haven't written regularly since then. And I keep saying, I will probably go back to poetry one day. But I need to go back to it where I'm tapping into what it was that drew me to it, which is I wrote for myself.
Yeah. And I think, so I'm seeing parallels because I've never been in any doubt that music can be monetized, that it can be something that I could draw an income out of. But to the point, when I started working with my wife in about 2010, professionally, that she will be the admin engine and I will be the creator. Part of what she was saying, because our children were then starting school, the eldest Pendo was starting school, was that you would go and do a gig with so and so because it pleases you and not worry about the rands and cents side of it. And so she made sense of the sense, right? To say you've got to, I mean, I knew how to send invoices and all of that. She was like, no, but have you thought about this? Why are you charging so little? And I thought, you just being my wife. And she was right, because she had a commercial eye to this. She comes from a marketing background. So you don't want for the ability to earn or the possibility of earning to kind of dampen that creativity or the risks that you take. But at some point, you have to stop taking those risks because, as you say, there are children and there is, you want to send them to a certain kind, any school, it costs money, right? So I had to do that. I had to learn that discipline and that my gifts and my hard work have to yield. I have to have something to show for it for the people that I'm responsible to legally, and just because I choose to look after them anyway. So it is almost a burden that's placed on someone like myself to take this thing that should just emerge from the ether somehow, and you translate it into something that people can consume, right? Which is a performance. But on a kind of a regime of, and it has to work, it has to make sense, otherwise you won't get booked again. You know what? How onerous that is, and how much it can, in a way, stifle, if not completely kill your spontaneity, because now you have to second guess what the client wants, what the audience want. You can't just do it and go, oh well, maybe next time. It has to work, you know. So it is, and the more you do it, so after 30 years, you kind of go, you find a happy medium of pushing boundaries, but also not leaving people behind. So because there are a lot of people, and when people say, oh, so many musicians die paupers, yes, because they were focused on just the vision to say, I have to tell the story, I have to tell my story, but sometimes the audience has to be ready. You know, not all audiences are forgiving, and maybe when you become William Kentridge, when you become Zoibal, when you become Michael Jackson, when you become Zoe Mudicha. We were recently, you and I, at the same event where it was a listening session for her new album. I mean, it was like, wow, you know, wow, I've never seen something like this before. It was maybe for some people it was a bit of a shock to say, okay, not ready for that, but she has earned the right.
Yeah.
You know, she has earned the right. You know, if she was a cricket bowler and she said, I want 3 slips, and the captain was saying, but there are holes, I want 3 slips. The captain looks and says, you know what, you are my premier wicket taker, I'll give you your 3 slips.
Or even Msaki, I mean, I've recently had Msaki on the podcast, and I know that you recently worked with her.
Yeah.
It's earning the right to now craft that creative side and being able to explore it.
Yeah.
I just had a mini epiphany. So one of the things that I always ask creative people, because it's the thing I struggle with the most, is kind of, what's your creative practice, or what's your creative space? But actually, when you're describing it just now, my epiphany was, I come more from your wife's perspective in terms of, you know, work, what I studied, etc. The creative side of me manifested in its own way, in small ways, and it was always like my thing. And then I had the period like when I was into poetry and I was in the scene. And when you talk about Gaboma, we did, I think it's now, somebody was saying it's now 20 years.
Yeah.
We did a poetry show, which was a cross between like a poetry show and a play, and it was called Seven. And we did it Market Theatre Lab. And there was 7 of us, 7 male poets. It was called The Streets Have Lips. And each of us wrote poetry from the perspective of the streets that we come from, the streets that raised us. And, you know, Mac Manako was there, Afura Khan, Flo, Gabomo, etc. And that was a purely creative experience. Like, we rehearsed for 2 weeks. We weren't getting paid. We put it on once. I asked a friend to film it, and I think the tapes were lost. And all we have to show for it was like a little booklet, and I still have 2 or 3 at home. But after that, it was, you know, I've got responsibilities, etc. And then I shifted. So when I'm thinking about it, it's like my period of, let me focus on my creativity, let me focus on my art, was a very short period of time. And then the business person, the marketer, came back in. So I work around the creative space, but even the work, like even my writing, like I haven't written poetry regularly in 15 years. And my question's always because I'm trying to find my way back to it.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I'll tell you, and it's his story to tell in detail. But Wouter Kellerman, 3 Grammys. Wouter tells the story that it took a few attempts. He's an engineer by training, and it took maybe 3 or 4 attempts to become a musician, because he'd say, right, this year I'm having a full go at this thing, and he booked gigs. 7 months later, he was back practicing as an engineer. So yeah, the imperatives, I guess, of what it is to raise a family will always trump. You can't go to your bank manager and say, "Listen, my book's really doing well. Just give me a." No, you can't do that. You have to. You have to. It's almost a parallel process to keep working at the stuff, because that's what fuels you, right? That's what when I sit up on the bed in the morning, already those quavers and crotchets are playing in my head, to say, oh, I'm doing this. Oh, today we're rehearsing this. Oh, I'm so excited, admin, whatever it is. But what drives me is when I stand there or when the orchestra is tuning and I'm about to walk on stage, because they tune before the conductor walks on. That is what I live for. It's not even the performance itself. It's almost a foreplay. It's the foreplay where you go, moment. Okay, this is what it's lived up. Because when the performance happens, it's over before you know it. People say, "Do you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it?" I don't know. I don't know. I'll see when I get home. Then on the way home, my wife and I will be talking about, yeah, actually, it was an amazing concert. It's like, oh, I didn't give that one a cue, and for the next 30 seconds, we're all finding our way or trying to get them back in, and those things, of course, they're part of it. And there is a beauty about the non-perfect, the imperfect harmony, the non-perfect performance. There is something beautiful about it, and how I always say to the orchestra, only you and God knew. Somebody goes, "Oh, Maestro, I'm sorry, I missed that." I say, "Oh, I hadn't even noticed. Only you and God know." Keep going.
I can imagine it's also one of those times when you're fully in the moment.
Yeah.
It's not it's not the problems that you have or tomorrow. Like, you are fully in this moment with these people.
I learned that from my father. My father was like an insane man, Mr. Music. My dad would sit in concerts. Yeah, Linda Auditorium, only black people in the audience. And my dad would close his eyes. Very to himself, but and people would go, and they actually see there's a synchronization
between him and the conductor.
Yeah, or what the orchestra is doing. But he'd be doing it for himself. He'd be imagining he was, but not disturbing anyone, just going, or whatever. Or leaning back at the time when that big chord hits, and he goes, and if you don't know the piece, you go, "Oh gosh, that man anticipated it," because he's enjoying the performance. So I learned just from observing how immersive even just listening to music, to a performance can be. So why waste a moment? You know how hard it is, how expensive it is to assemble an orchestra for a performance. I am going to enjoy it. And enjoying it doesn't necessarily mean enjoying it in the moment. It just means enjoy the privilege of being there and enjoy being that conduit between composer and audience. And then thereby, when the feedback comes, whether by way of applause or people, musicians sending you a WhatsApp the next one, you say, Kutlwano, yesterday you outdid yourself. That's the enjoyment. So it's not always immediate. Of course, the immediacy of it, or the time you spend there, especially when you're a conductor, we all have an ego. I enjoy that I'm standing there and everybody's going, "Hey, this guy," But yeah, it's totally immersive, and one must never ever worry about, oh, the first movement didn't go well. There's the next movement. Or, oh, well, this concert, it was very outraged. Or this audience, gosh, Barobes, it's like they're not here. Doesn't matter. There's the next time. Just enjoy it because it is a privilege.
Do you feel comfortable with the label Maestro now?
I do. I kind of love it. Um, and I think I say it in Imperfect Harmony that when people started calling you maestro, like even your friends call you maestro. It's like, but you know my name. But I think it caught on because people who don't speak Setswana or Sesotho struggle to say Kutlwano. So I thought, they're just calling me maestro. And I realized, no, but even my friends call me maestro. And yeah, I do enjoy it because, of course, it's a recognition. They don't have to call you maestro; they can call you Kutlwano, but they do. And it's a recognition of, okay, you're the guy, and please lead us. So yeah, love it.
How, at what point did you feel comfortable with it? Because I mean, you do talk about, and because you're also steeped in kind of that culture and that background and that space, you probably recognize the significance of it more than most, because you've also sat with 101 maestros who have mentored you and you've looked up to. At what moment did you feel, actually, I'm there now?
Yeah, I think it's a process, but it's probably in the last 10 years. Remember, and as I say in the book, I had my first professional engagement as a conductor in 2006. So my hashtag this year is 20 years in front, which I think is quite beautiful and poetic, because I haven't just been conducting. I think I've started, I don't want to call it a movement, but I have recognized where we can take this thing called orchestral music in this country. Um, but I think in the last 10, maybe we also had two very dead years of the lockdowns. But in the last maybe 8 or 10 years, did I recognize and accept that I'm now the grown up in the room, that people actually expect leadership, also because of how the work that we've done as Web Maestro, being the company that my wife and I started and run, that not only in recent years are people calling me to say, can you come and conduct here? In the early years, I had to create my own work. So I think the term maestro also, in the way that it's been used for me, it's been like, you're a movement, you're a leader. Show us the way. And I think that became really apparent as we're starting to get the big gigs going, whether it's our Opera Jewels series, which died with the pandemic, but we're trying to bring back, and others. Now the big thing that we're doing is classics on turf, and we have a commercial sponsor. And although I can't call it completely a Web Maestro initiative, but we've been instrumental in bringing it up. But I think it's when we started working with the big artists, the pretty enders of this world, that people really started to sit up and listen. And I've really been blessed. I mean, 2 years ago we did a concert with Chris Botti with Orchestra. He came here for Joy of Jazz, but there was an event for just the sponsor, a dinner, and they had Chris with an orchestra. And to be peers, I'll tell the story very quickly. They sent a whole lot of sheet music, like 30 songs, and they said on the day we'll decide which we'll do. Really wonderful manager of Chris. So they then had a short list probably 2 days before. We had already had the first rehearsal. So it was the day before. They said, these are the 10 want to do. Chris might play in all of them, maybe, because they've come to South Africa. We have only one rehearsal with him because he arrived the day before. So on the morning, we had the rehearsal. I said, okay, let's do this one. No. Okay, we'll do this one. Let's do this one. Do you know we played in all 10? Because they were thinking, okay, we'll only use the orchestra. And they had one which didn't even have charts. They said, this is how it is. Guys, you'll join in when you do. And they said, brass, you play some jazz, right? Yeah, you join in. Even the strings were jamming along because this is South Africa. You hear where it's going. Yeah, okay, here's my line, So yeah, that's also a kind of it's a feedback to say you guys know what you're doing, and while I give full credit to my colleagues, the ones that did the playing in the orchestra, it does also take I think part of where I enjoy my role, especially when you work with community choirs who a conductor that say comes from England and is working here will not understand how to what does the song even mean, or how what's the protocol around our engagement. I think those kinds of sensibilities of the fact that I'm a multilingual person, also musically, have really added to this maestro that I'm still becoming, because it's a journey, as you know.
I'm actually curious. So when I was reading the book, one thing that I thought about, I mean, you got to study in Switzerland, you traveled and performed around the world from a very young age. And you talk about some of the people that you came up with that eventually went out and never came back.
Yeah.
What brought you back?
So really the people that are now, and I mentioned some by name, that are playing in some of the top orchestras in the world, some of them conducting and running this or that. A lot of them are a little bit older, so they left still during apartheid, or at least when there was great uncertainty as to where this country was going. So that was a normal route for a lot of Afrikaner children who went mostly to Austria and Germany because linguistically it was easier to connect. And a lot of them just never came back. Most of them just never came back. In recent years, people that go and study abroad invariably come back. Also because it's harder to stay for reasons we won't get into. For me, that moment in 1998, which it was, kind of, do I stay, do I not stay? South Africa was a really charming place. Mandela was still president. It wasn't the South Africa we see today. Crime was already, everybody was talking about crime. And I remember coming back, my brother looked at me once and said, "Hey, you're obsessed with crime." Because it's like, but is it safe? But, because that's what you read. So it was clear that, our violent past was not going to disappear with a new dispensation. In fact, it found a greater or a deeper expression because basically because of the inequality. That's what drives people to those things. But I came back because South Africa was hugely attractive. Being a young 25-year-old, I realized that the future was mine to take. And I think I've kind of grabbed some of the opportunities and hung on to them. It was very clear that it was a place that was ripe for the taking if you were willing to buckle down. It was clear that South Africa needed all of its children to come to it and contribute. You can't just take as, and I'm not blaming the people that left as takers. They left for their own reasons, for their own uncertainties, and I completely understand it. I toyed with it in my own head, but I realized that there was a place for me here if I was able to play my cards right and if I was willing to just buckle down. Lots of disappointments, of course, with how the country has, progressed, and I'll be frank, how government has failed our sector. Minister after minister after minister. And so I'm not so sure that it's even an ANC failing. I think while rugby reminds us of how great we are, our real currency and the soul of South Africa is in its singing. You go anywhere in the world, people ask you about your music. Everybody starts singing Nkosi Sikelel. you know. And so that's the South Africa that was zinging at the moment in the late 1990s. So for me, it was a no-brainer. And with the sacrifices of, for example, my grandparents, I thought I have to come back and contribute somehow. Even at 25, when you think about me, I realized that I could have that me here. And I think I have had it and continue to enjoy it.
What I took away from the book and what I enjoyed, and there's a lot of things, but you provided, in a way, a template, and the thinking that you can craft a life for yourself within this industry coming from this particular space. And for me, it stands out because you're coming from classical, you're coming from, so it's a niche within the broader music industry. The fact that that you've been able to build a life for yourself and continue to do things and build a life. Because when I was from poetry to going into magazine to even going into radio, my whole thing was you can build, and I call it a portfolio life.
Yeah.
Like literally it's pieces of lots of different things. And out of that, you build your salary, your livelihood, and you're able to navigate the world. And it's interesting now because I think the generations coming up, our children's generations and the generations coming up, are going to have lives more like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you asked the question in a different way earlier about, did I have anything else as a youngster that I thought I might want to do? I think we all have more than one talent. As my son Kako did, great music genes, but he decided he wants to do something else with his life. By the way, still plays a little bit for himself. I bumped into radio. I talk about it in the book. The fact that I sit at certain tables where we planning golf events, but I plug in the music. I've only just recently bought myself my first set of clubs, and I'm trying to understand what this golf thing. We all know, hey, deals are made on the golf course, and that, although that in itself doesn't turn me on, the idea of bringing those people that make decisions that could benefit my sector and getting them into a concert hall after the event excites me, right? And so I have been very fortunate, but I've also struggled a lot. Financially, it hasn't been easy. Some things go well, some things, you think, here it is, and then it's pushed out, etc., and people lose interest. I talk also in Imperfect Harmony about our idea to do an African version of Eurovision Song Contest, Song of Africa, and we had, of course, our own, dynamics as a group of 4 people. Eventually, we had, we all abandoned the project, etc. Yeah, you've got to be, you've got to, and part of being a good musician is listening, and listening is not even listening to people's words. It's about listening to the music in the air. Having a sense of where are things going, and finding your place, harmonizing in this music making process, metaphorically speaking. So I think you're right. My life has been about those portfolios. Radio, for example, kept food on the table during those hard lockdown years because I was able to leave the house. I still got my permit, by the way, laminated, to leave the house when others couldn't because we're essential services. And when performances, a gathering stopped, I was still able to earn a salary from Classic FM at the time. And so, yeah, you keep, pokers in the fire. No one could have predicted a lockdown, but I always saw it as something that I enjoyed, radio, and was dying to get back. And I got back 2 years before a lockdown, after a 5-year absence. And thank goodness that had happened for me, and continue, to do it. So yeah, it's about looking at all your skills and the work that I do now through music. It's not really music; it's facilitation. I'd go there to banks and tell CEOs how they can more effectively rally their troops, because this is how I do it when we play a difficult piece of music, and the processes are the same. I might not have the business vocabulary, but they'll figure out what they need to do through our vocabulary and our give and take, our negotiation. When do I put my foot down? How do I address that problem? So, it's communication, and I didn't know that I had those skills until I started conducting.
I mean, you reminded me when we bumped into each other where we initially met, and
Yes,
I had you on my show in Kaya,
right.
talking about, and it was let's call it a borrowed idea, because I'd listened to a podcast where he was the maestro from the Canadian Philharmonic Orchestra or something, but he was being interviewed on how the leading an orchestra and leading the organization, how it applies to business and leadership. And it was very specific. And I enjoyed listening to it so much.
Yeah.
I remember sitting with my producer and I'm like, find me conductors because I want to have this conversation. Yeah. And then you came through and we had that conversation because, the world that we're living in now, there's a bit more of a space for us generalists. Like I'm very much a generalist, but being able to take insights and skills from one space and applying it to other spaces. And specifically, even just the act of conducting an orchestra, you're dealing with different personalities, different instruments, a different audience, a different energy in the room. And that can be applied to, it can be applied to, like you're doing, to any type of space, whether it's sports, whether it's business, whether it's family, a social setting, etc.
No, sure. I mean, I think, and we broadly call this harmonizing the workplace. And we try and set it.
Great title.
Yeah. So I must tell you, and I hope they see this. I've spoken to two people at my childhood love, which is Kaizer Chiefs. I've spoken to two of the people that run it, and I've even sent the one pitched the idea and sent them videos of some of the work we do with corporates, because I think Kaizer Chiefs could benefit from that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'm with you there, 100%.
Because they're a team. They're playing football. There's teamwork, and they've got players. They've got capable players. There's something that's just not clicking, right? I've pitched the same idea to a very successful team, which is the Lions Cricket Club here in Johannesburg. I mean, they're the most successful cricket franchise in the world because they win everything every year. Kind of, they're the Sundowns, if you like, of cricket. But still, you can't rest on your laurels, right? To say there is a science behind this, and Benjamin Zander, I think, is the conductor that you had that had inspired what became our first meeting, from how the orchestra can inspire a boardroom, but can also inspire a change room. It can inspire an organization, a radio station. So we do this for I'm sorry, I'll mention brands just to show the kinds of people that value this work. Deloitte, we're doing another one this week where it used to be the associate directors as they become directors at the firm, and they take them through, and we do a morning. And to demonstrate this is we do this facilitated thing where we rehearse this piece, and then they could ask questions, and the facilitator could really zone into the things they've been talking about for 3 days, and it culminates in this morning's performance. And then the facilitator says, let's take a 15-minute tea break and we'll continue afterwards. What they don't know is that in that 15-minute break, we go and change into concert clothes. This is like 9 o'clock in the morning. And we come back and we play the exact same piece for them. And the lesson there, for the orchestra as well, is you need to show up, you need to step up, you need to dress up, whatever, power dress, whatever. Because I also realized as soon as I put on the bow tie, I'm a different person. I never want to play badly, but I play better when I do this. It's amazing. So it's about showing up, and this is the moment. We get one shot. You don't hit it. That's it. You have to wait till the next time. So we've done it for Hollard, done it for Harambe, where I even wrote a song and I write about it in the book, a song for them. So these are our processes are all the same, and I don't consider myself a people's person necessarily. I mean, I'm not averse to socializing, but because I stopped drinking, I find myself having to drag myself to events. And the last event we were at, you would have noticed that I didn't stay till the end. But I've developed my communication skills, and just to excite people, even if it's just for the moment, about what is possible, and then you just leave it with them. They'll find their lesson in it.
I'm busy experimenting and developing and finding that with writing and journaling. We're having conversations with people in, for example, business and business schools, because I journal, and it's a large part of how I make sense of the world.
Sure.
And I also recognize that it's of value to everyone, not just me as a writer. But recently, I did a masterclass series for an agency where they said we want our people to appreciate writing more.
Yeah.
And in this world where there's digital and all of these things, I went with it and I developed it. But because I'm not inside, I'm still like, but is it really that important? It's important to me, and I consider it important, but I didn't recognize that some people in those spaces also recognize the importance of it, and therefore phoned me to come in. So I went and I talked storytelling and writing and journaling. And I've had a couple of conversations with some friends and some colleagues in different spaces who are going, even if you just came and talked about journaling, it has value within a business context, and I don't see it. Even though I studied economics, I've worked with business, but I don't see the need. They see the need because they're in the middle of it.
So in organizations, people are tired of these the usual team building exercise, and this is the feedback that always comes back. Say, "Wow, I didn't even like classical music, or I didn't know that I like classical music." Because first thing is, when is your next concert, right? Because they've been bowled over in an hour and a half's activity and seeing you dress up as well. But they are tired of the same routine of, okay, it's broken, how do we fix it? Let's get this, let's get that in, a specialist in this. Let's get drumming in. All very valuable, because then it's the nice thing about the drumming is that you do it, everybody communes, right? It's participatory. But I think what you then, from picking up on what you're saying, is what perhaps you are not recognizing is that they are so much in this quagmire themselves, and probably contributing to it just by being there, that they're desperate for a fresh perspective, right? They're anything, but not that one, because we've tried it before. And that's the beauty of it. And creative processes, all of us have tried to draw something. That's how we know that we can't do it, because we tried it. They fascinate us. We've all tinkered at a piano like, but I can't play like my brother, right? We've all been told, because we wanted to join the choir, because maybe you get to miss Afrikaans or maths in the, and you realize no. So we've all tried it. When you have it brought into your environment and it is a little bit participatory, and you feel, thank God they didn't ask me to sing the solo, but I could, because one of the exercises I do is, one of our viola players in the orchestra is a fantastic tenor, and we do Nessun Dorma at the end. And he sings. So I teach them a little bit the chorus. I project the words in Italian, and everybody feels, oh, we're gonna sing in the chorus. I say, but only when I point to you. But when it comes, da da da. And then Kauchel will start, Nessun Dorma, Nessun Dorma, da da da. And when we get to I point, and everybody sing, and then of course at the end, Vincero, Vince, and everybody gets, so at least they were not asked to sing the rest of it, but they feel that they sang Nessun Dorma with an orchestra. That's what excites them. It's that freshness and that they get it, that we all have to be together it's no accident that we have to work in unison. We have to do it in concert. We have to harmonize. These are the words I use every day. I don't want to be playing second fiddle to this one,
Yes.
because that's what we're doing. We're telling stories. We're performing. Work is performative. What we're doing now, for you to be an interesting radio personality or even the podcaster that you are, there's something performative about what you're doing, right? You've got to be interesting, and I think we all miss that, or we all want to know, how can I be that? And so when your work environment is sprinkled with this magic, even if it's just for the morning, you then start to recognize that music is problem solving. Arts are problem solving. They're not just words string together. In order to excel at them, your brain has to be wired in a way where there's almost, in a sense, a problem statement, and you play, you move the pieces around, and that's the fun.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, you could have chosen other ways, but you chose these ones, and wow, the solution.
I was talking to Tambile Masola, and because for me, writing is building a puzzle.
Yeah.
Like, there's a puzzle, there's different pieces to it, and it's like you're saying, how do I move them around?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's in my head for days.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, I've started now. Where's the puzzle? Like, I know what I'm trying to solve, but that piece works here. It's not flowing quite right. So I need to take out this or take out that.
So the other interesting thing is, of course, there's a preparation. You can't go on stage unprepared. You know that, I know that. You can hear on the radio, you hear it a lot. You think, this person just showed up, right? And they're going to be interviewing, they've got a chance to interview Chris Botti, and they didn't do that. I said, oh man, it drives me insane, right? You've got to be prepared, but I think I always say to the orchestra, we've got to leave some to chance. Guys, Maestro, can we do that? No. We've put a red, we've underlined it to say, hey, here, guys, we need all our words. Let's see what happens. Guys. And of course, it goes against the training, especially of classical music. But I think it's what keeps it exciting. You should be prepared, obviously, but don't overthink things. Don't don't try to prescribe outcomes too much, because creativity is about, oh, that was interesting. I never considered that.
I always say, so one of my big lesson in that was being in radio.
Yeah.
And, you were on my show, but so my show was very unique. It was closer to this.
Yeah.
It was closer to podcast than typical radio show. But when I started, I always had an agenda. I had a sense of the story that I wanted to tell. And so I'd get guests in and I'd have questions. But I want us to leave. When I leave, this is the message that I want listeners to have gotten. And I remember interviewing somebody who couldn't give me that.
Yeah.
And I think it was around gentrification.
Yeah.
But this person was not, whether it's socially, whether it's politically, etc., they weren't of that thinking.
Yeah.
And no matter what question I asked them, they couldn't give me the answer that I wanted for me to share with listeners that gentrification is not necessarily a positive thing.
Right.
And that's when I realized that sitting with a list of questions, even if I've sat and I've looked at the flow of the questions, because I'm constantly looking for a thread. So, I'll move my questions around to go, okay, this is the rhythm, this is the flow. And after that, I gave myself a lot more room.
Yeah. I think also and this is what you're saying, what you do when it's too set in its progression, especially. I mean, when you get asked to an interview, you kind of know if you are an MEC for water and sanitation, and you get invited, you know they want to talk about the water situation in Johannesburg, in particular, and everywhere else in the country. But you know, if you are too, as an interviewer, if you are too regimented, you probably are going to lose that what you want to come out. I think you have to take the feedback to say, okay, this person feels more comfortable if it's done this way. Quick example: when I was at Classic FM, there was someone we had to interview who were still in Melrose Arch, and every time there was a new tenant in the center, they'd have to come on the radio station so that we promote. You know, it was a deal with MDEC, the landlord of Melrose Arch. So someone had just opened a gym, and this person, I think she had to psych herself up to come to an interview, a pre-recorded interview. She's oh, I can't talk. So we start the interview, and after the first question, she asked for water. My mouth is dry. I can't, oh gosh, I really don't want to do this. And so we give her water and we chat gently. So tell me, you said your husband does this. Oh, okay. And family, okay. And so why a gym? I mean, why did you? I mean, couldn't? Oh, you used to do this. Da, da, da. And we keep talking. Would you like more water? And we talk and talk and talk. And I looked at the engineer after about 5 minutes, and I said, "Pete, did you get that?" "Yes." "Thank you." And she says, "What do you mean thank you?" I said, "No, we'll edit it. Yeah. Thank you for that." You know, so I got everything out because I started with other things. Then I said, "And how did you come to do this?" And we talked a little bit about it, and that was it. You know.
What's exciting you now?
I think now that my children are both in their 20s now, we've just had a 20th birthday, one gets a level of your life back. I want to travel, and not travel for the sake of traveling. I want to go and hear things in my workspace. I want to go and hear productions. Exciting things are happening in Europe, especially, whether it be opera, experimental stuff. And I want to go and hear it and see it and talk to people. So I'd like to travel. I said to a colleague the other day, guys, when you see me traveling abroad, don't say, "Hey, Brake, the money is flowing." Firstly, I have not been abroad for 9 years because of the pandemic and just sorting out other things. But secondly, I am that age now where I need to be out there. I'm becoming a reasonably sized fish in a reasonable sized pond, and I want to jump in the ocean now. Because as you know, goldfish will only grow will grow as big as the pond that they're in allows them. And I feel I want to swim in a bigger pond now. So I'm now 52, going on 53. I want to, obviously the finiteness of the days you have you start to see it. So I want to dedicate my afternoon of my life to just going places, because we haven't done it now. We raised a family and we had different priorities. Because I work with Maslugelo, my wife, we're able to travel together, and so I'm also looking forward to that next chapter of our lives, and I think that will make me a different kind of creative. I would like to also, as time goes on, I don't want to get into a public office or anything like that, but I would like to start a different kind of activism with our, those that what's the word, preside over us, the government, to say how we've had 30 years of a kind of new way of living here in South Africa. But can I tell you something? When I grew up, and I talk about it at length in Imperfect Harmony, about just how there were youth orchestras everywhere and how there was a system of becoming a professional classical music practitioner, how there was a system of becoming a professional ballet dancer. There was just like there is with rugby now, there's a age group thing, Craven Week, Varsity Cup, Springboks, or at least franchise then Springboks. We don't have that. We lose so much talent. So can we look back, when I was 10 years old, I don't say it in the book, I did ballroom dancing because there was something called a community center throughout the township there were, and the one offered ballroom dancing. I did it for a year, but if you ask me today, where's that community center? I'll take you there one day. They bake bricks now. It's an industrial little place. Sure, people need to eat. But what about the soul of the country? What are our children supposed to be doing? We talk so much about the scourge of this and that, but we don't have anything there. So this is a conversation with others, with my network group, my colleagues, my peers who we grew up, Black music, classical music practitioners, that we grew up together. We speak a lot about this, and it's something that I'd like to dedicate more than just conversation to. So I think, as I say, I've become the grown up in the room, and I need to use, and I say it in Imperfect Harmony, that I wanted to conduct because it would put me at these tables of influence where I can influence. Certainly policy is what I want to look at, but also just a greater appreciation of what the creative arts are about.
Thank you very much.
Kojo, I must thank you, and congratulations for the work that you do too.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this conversation. Please leave a review and subscribe. Check out the show notes for links to the guest, the podcast, and myself. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.